Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Sarah Liz and I'm back with another stepped up emergency card video. We are using kit 16. So this was the free printable that came out on the 1st of October and it has fall and Thanksgiving sentiments. So there are 2 pages of the circle sentiments, one with circles and one without. And then there are 2 pages of those same sentiments as strip sentiments. So there's 4 different fonts in there. And then finally, we have a card sketch. We made an A2 card and this has all your measurements for your mats and layers and all those sorts of pieces. But today we're going to turn that into a fun fold. I am in need of birthday cards, so I wanted to make some fancy ones. I'm using the Serenade of Autumn foiled vellum from Spellbinders. This is new. It was gifted to me, though when they give me things, there's no expectation that I will make a video with it. If I'm putting Spellbinder stuff in a video, it's because I love it. So I have an A2 panel of lavender cardstock and I am adding to the back of it 2 little strips of double-sided adhesive. Then I have a strip of vellum that is 2.5 inches by 6 inches and I need to adhere this to the panel without putting adhesive on the front of my card because you'll see it right through the vellum. So I am just lining this up in the center. I used my grid mat, but you could totally eyeball it. And then I will fold over the ends. There's a little like 1/4 inch on either end that will wrap around and I will lay it into that double-sided tape. And then no one's gonna see any adhesive showing through the vellum. Once that's attached, I can add this to my card base. It's just an A2 card base. I'm using side folding, which is unusual for me. In my head, I thought I had to because we're gonna have a fun fold flap feature on the right, but actually, you could do this with a top folding card base, and I'm not sure why I didn't do that. I normally prefer a top folding card base, but anyway, either way will work. Next, I wanted to add an extra pop of gold. So I have some strips of matte gold cardstock. I used my favorite scrapbook.com Slimline strip dies. I'll link them below. I'll link everything below. And I am adding glue just a little bit to the purple cardstock, but then a little bit to the vellum. This is also going to help secure down that vellum. It is overlapping where the vellum meets the cardstock. Okay, so I will do that on both sides here, and then I will just use my scissors to trim off the excess from either end. One thing to keep in mind when you go to trim off the edges is that we have wrapped that vellum around the back. So you've got to be really careful not to accidentally cut the vellum as well. Could you secure this using just the strips? Yes. I didn't trust my gluing skills. I was having a day, you guys. I didn't trust my gluing skills enough to do it just that way. Plus now you've got options. To create our fun fold, I have a 3.5 inch square of cardstock. If you look at the sketch, the square is 3 3/4. I'm scaling it down because that's what fit for this card design, and we'll talk through options. Then I'm going to score this 1 1/4 inches away from the center. So I just lined up the 2 tips of my diamond into, I have like a track in the middle where I've used a white gel pen to make it easier to see. And I'll score 1 1/4 inches away from that center point of our diamond. Then I am going to fold that back and I'm going to burnish it really well. I'm using 100-pound cardstock here, though honestly 80-pound is a little bit easier to work with. And I'm going to do that on the next card. So I'm going to add glue to our little flap and I'm going all the way to the edge, but then where that crease is, I am not coming all the way up into the crease. If I do, I run the risk of glue oozing into the open part of my card and gluing my card shut. Next, I'm going to line that piece up on the front of my card towards the top and I'm going to wrap the short flap with the glue around the back. And I'm going to press until that holds. And you can see how it kind of pops up there. That's okay. Next, I have a square that is 3 1/4 inches. Again, it's a 1/4 inch smaller than what's on the printable. And I am going to center that onto our little flap. Okay, it's going to leave me just a little 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. And then at first I wanted to wrap this around, like I like the look of that, but I know then when I open that flap, it's going to crinkle up right where the fold is. So instead I decided to trim it off. Yes, there's a little glue on my card. Just pretend like it's not there and learn from me, right? I highly recommend just trimming that off. So I need another piece to help keep that flap closed. And I am using one of my favorite new die sets, again from Spellbinders. This is the Birthday Wreath add-on. And so I had the die set popped up there because I forgot to show it to you. But there's all kinds of really great dies in there. We have this present with this epic bow. The bow in here is phenomenal. There are 2 party hat options, a cupcake, a balloon. Like, all of this is supposed to be part of this wreath builder series. So there's a build a wreath, there's a Christmas wreath add-on, the birthday wreath add-on. I think there's a Halloween and a something else. And wreaths are great. I don't make a lot of wreaths. I've never really thought about wanting to make a wreath. I'll probably try it out. I do have like the base die set, the build a wreath. But I love these sets where you can make one small die cut or medium-sized die cut, and it's not a ton of pieces, but that texture and the layering just adds something extra special to your card. Okay, and so I love this one for the gift and the party hats. We're going to use both of those on here. And I am just sort of layering up the pieces. It's really, really intuitive. I am adding some thin foam, like 1mm foam on either side of the bow because there's enough layers of cardstock that it was going to get a little wonky. I am going to add this present to the bottom right. You can see how my sort of diamond is popping up. It's going to help hold that flap down. Okay, so I am going to flip this over and I am going to add 2mm foam adhesive. This is like a normal height foam adhesive, but only diagonally to half of it. I want this to have some give. I'm going to be pulling things out from underneath it, okay? And then I'm going to line this up and I'm going to freeze it for you. You see this? It is just barely overlapping that diamond, just barely. If you overlap it more than that, you're going to have a hard time getting the flap opened and closed. And then I'm going to press that down. Okay, so there's my flap. And look, it's going to pull up on that present die cut, but I didn't glue the whole die cut down, so it's got some give. And then to get it back under there, I just fold the card back ever so slightly. Okay, so again, here's that birthday wreath add-on. It also has this happy birthday, very scripty happy birthday in the back. Look at that Christmas wreath add-on with the season's greetings. I've already had a video come out using like the top hat and the season's greetings from that. Phenomenal sets. If you don't have these, check your stash. Look for some kind of small to medium sized die cut that will fit in that bottom left corner. If you got the Envelope of Wonder or the Autumn Wonder or any of those have die cuts that are really similar in size. If you've got something else in your stash that you're like, this will definitely work for it, I want to know about it because I love die sets like that. So leave it for me in the comments below. I am just using some wet glue to add the happy birthday. Off camera, I did stack these up. So it's one piece of matte gold cardstock and then one piece of craft cardstock. Totally unnecessary. So I ended up editing that out. I was like, nobody really needs to go through that trouble. But I am dotting the glue on here and then I'm tapping it off either on the back of my hand or with my pinky to make sure the glue isn't going to ooze out. And then I decided I needed more something on there. And so this is one of the party hat inserts and I just cut out a couple rounds from some matte gold cardstock and matte silver cardstock, and I'm just gluing them all around. You could use gems for this instead. Guys, instead of the present, you could use one of our circle sentiments and then just use pattern paper on that flap. Or you could create a scene with some stamped something or with different die cuts, right? Like do this in a way that makes cards the way you love to do it most. I love die cuts, so I'm adding die cuts. On the inside, I've had this little guy sitting on my desk for a while. It says, "You are capable of extraordinary things." And this sentiment was from our encouragement set. I will link to the playlist for all of the emergency kits and free printables at the end. And I'll try to link this kit in particular below. But this way, it's like a happy birthday and then a little encouragement. Our flap opens very easily because we only overlapped the present a little bit. And it opens up to one of my very favorite messages. And then I just fold back a little to tuck that flap under the present. And that finishes card 1. I love that card a ton, but then I made this one and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know which one's my favorite. I'm starting with a navy card base. You could use just a card front if you wanted, but I like the look of it here. And then these are the Essential Stylish ovals, and I'm using the 4th largest, and I've cut it out of some brown cardstock. This is 80-pound cardstock, and I'm not going to layer another piece of cardstock on top of that, and you'll be able to see the difference in how this one moves for the opening and closing of that flap, right? So the first one was 100-pound, this one's 80-pound, and it's a little easier, I think, to work with. For our die cut on the bottom left that's going to hold our fun flap closed, I am using the Sunflower Serenade. This is another new one from Spellbinders, and it's a small die set, so the price point is pretty low, which I love. And I am just layering up 2 of the flower petal pieces, and I kind of zhuzhed them up. I hand deliver a lot of my cards, so I'm not really worried about it getting flattened in the mail. And then I offset them when I glued them together. And then there's 2 little pieces that go in the center. There are 3 different leaf options and there's a stem, but I'm not using those yet. Then I'm going to take some gold metallic paint and I am just going to flick this onto my card base. I've taped it shut so I don't get paint on the inside, hopefully not on the back, but who knows if I'm flicking paint. And I am just tapping that all over. Sometimes, you guys, I can't find a pattern paper in my ridiculous hoard of a stash that I like for a particular card. And this was one of those cases. So I was like, you know what? We'll keep it simple. Just a few gold accents. I set that aside to dry. It is completely dry as I am working with it now. The brown cardstock on its own just felt too plain. It also needed some kind of pop of gold, but I didn't want to flick onto that one too. So I am taking it and I am tapping around the edges into my Versamark pad, or any embossing ink would work here. And then I have Brutus Monroe Gilded embossing powder, and I just poured out a little mound of it onto some scratch paper, and I am dipping the edges of my cardstock with that ink into my embossing powder. So this is going to add just a little bit of that gold accent around the edges. Something to keep in mind as you're heat setting is to make sure that you are melting the powder on the front and on the back of the die cut, right? Ask me how I've learned this lesson many times, right? So make sure it's all melted or you're going to have powder kind of rubbing off on you. And that gives us just a little bit of something to help it stand out without having to layer up another piece of cardstock. These are the Serenade sentiments. There's a lot of that Sunflower Serenade stuff happening here. It's just a lovely collection. And it's got a bunch of really great words in there. I am using grateful, but it also has like a thank you and a thankful, happy birthday in this same really beautiful font. For a sub-sentiment, I have grabbed our Kit 16 strip sentiments, and this is the one that's the sort of classy serif font. And I'm just lining up the tick marks, and I just have to cut a few of these out until I get to that Happy Thanksgiving. I think that's the one that I want here. Then I will trim off the excess. I'm just using the right-hand side of the finger guard to make sure that my margins are equal on the left and right-hand sides. I'm trying to get the lay of the land before I start gluing anything down. And I'm just figuring out kind of where do I want this oval, and then I will use my pencil to mark that. So I didn't measure it ahead of time, but when I put it in here, it's an even 3.5 inches. So I'm going to score it 3.5 inches. But again, this is really about a method. Okay, use whatever shape you want here, and just make sure that whatever's on the bottom left, if you're going to create that sort of die cut for it to tuck underneath, make sure it's just barely overlapping, and then you can eyeball it. Again, I'm adding glue all the way to sort of the right edges, but not too close to the fold because I don't want glue easing into the opening of my card. Then I'm going to get the placement for my sunflower, and I am going to add a bunch of that 2mm foam just to the center of the back. Because this is a flower, I don't want to glue the petals down flat anyway, so they have more move and wiggle, I guess, than the present die cut did. Plus, then I have just a piece of 80-pound cardstock, that brown cardstock, to tuck underneath. So really, I'm sort of curling and folding that brown cardstock more than I'm folding the whole card to get that in and out from underneath the flower. I am going to mat my Happy Thanksgiving onto a 3/8 inch strip of matte gold cardstock, but really whatever strip you have that's a little bit bigger. I just happen to know that 3/8 of an inch looks pretty good. So I have started keeping a little dish of cardstock scraps that are 3/8 of an inch. I would love to know, this is a total tangent, how you guys are keeping your strip sentiments and circle sentiments organized. For me, I don't cut out the circles or punch out the circles until I need them. But the strip sentiments, like I have to cut a bunch out to get to the one that I want. And now I feel like I'm drowning in strip sentiments. So if you've got ideas or an organizational something that is working for you, please leave it in the comments below. I've either been tucking them in the folder where I keep the entire kit, or I've been putting them in those like static cling photo pages, but neither one is really working for me. Okay, back to the card. I am layering up some scrap cardstock behind that Happy Thanksgiving just to give it a little more weight, but this is absolutely optional. These are scraps that I had left over from something else, and I like this better than foam tape. It's easier for me, and I don't have to peel the release paper off of foam tape. And then I'm going to tuck that underneath the Grateful. If you have been with me for a while, you know when I am sort of arranging fonts onto sentiments, this is something I do a lot, where there's sort of a scripty something at an angle and then some sort of sub-sentiment sort of straight across beneath it. But then I'm looking at it and I was like, I want some more brightness, another pop of color on here. So these are the 3 different leaves that this die set comes with. Again, that's the Sunflower Serenade. And I'm just gonna arrange those underneath the Happy Thanksgiving. I'm sort of taping down the flap with a little bit of removable tape to make sure it's not gonna be wiggling and bouncing on me. And then I'm just gonna use my wet glue. There are little stems on here, especially this one on the left. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't going to catch on the sunflower as we're tucking and untucking that flap. So I did add glue just particularly on that stem, and I'll tap it off on the back of my hand. How do you guys do this? If you're using something really dainty, or you've got a thin die cut and you're using wet glue, do you just let the glue ooze out? Do you have a different way of like making sure you get the perfect amount of glue? I would love to know about it. But that finishes up card number 2. You guys, this is pretty quick and easy. You could make a bunch of Christmas cards using a design like this. I would love to see them. If you post them to social media, tag me at Sassy's LLC on Instagram. I would love to see them. I would love to know which card is your favorite. If you're interested in the free printable, I will link to that video below. All I ask is that you subscribe to my channel. If you enjoyed these cards, please give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.